explaining the mortal remains of Amazulu King Zwelithini Kabegu Zulu have returned to the royal palace of Kwaketo Mtandayo in KwaNongoma. In the early hours of Thursday morning, in a private ceremony, he will be interred. Earlier today, the King's army, Amabuto, made their way to the mortuary to collect his body and escort it back to the palace, accompanied by the Amazulu maidens. Let's discuss what has happened today and what is going to happen over the next few hours. I'm joined in studio by historian, sculptor and poet, Professor Pitika Ntili. Professor, it is an honour to have you in the studio. Thank you so much for coming in. And it has been such a learning curve for so many of us who are not steeped in what it is to be part of the Zulu culture. I just want to start by understanding some of the terminology we've been hearing. So, Isilo Samabandla, does that, am I correct, that means king of all Zulu kings, and why is it used now?
Why is it?
Why is it used at this time? Was it always used and we're only hearing it now?
It is always used that normally you do not call baby the king by his name. It's a sign of royal respect.
All right. And Isilo Samabandla, what does that mean exactly?
That is the head of all the nations, of all the councils. He is the ultimate ruler of the people.
And also we've been hearing a lot about the royal palace in KwaNongoma, Kwaketo Mtandayo. That also has a special meaning. Tell us about that.
Kwaketo Mtandayo literally translates as to the place where you choose the one you love. And while we are in the Zulu people are referred to as the people of the heavens, for the word Zulu means a heaven. But the word Zulu again means rain. So when the heavens have actually opened up, linking the celestial things to this, because the Zulu people also believe that they come from the planet of the red dog. That's why everything that is done in Zulu culture is done cyclically. You drink in circles, you worship in circles, you do everything in circles, linked actually to the heavens.
That is extraordinary, and I'm learning all the time. The king was born in KwaNongoma, 14th of July, 1948. Let's just talk a little bit about his history. I understand that his mother, Queen Tomozile, was the second wife of King Cyprian Kabeke Zulu Solomon. And her and the king were estranged when the Zulu monarch was about 10 years old. And he didn't know where his mother was buried. He was 10, I think, when his mother died. So it's an extraordinary story of how he didn't really grow up with his mother after the age of 10.
Yeah, it is quite very. But before we actually get to that, King Zwelithini, the king of the Zulus, was born the same year with the apartheid regime. And when everybody was worried, they named him Goodwill. That's not an accident again. But growing up without the mother, but there's always within in the Zulu culture a whole network of aunts and of cousins, and when they know who you actually are, you are linked to the people who will one way or another, directly and indirectly, prepare you, in a sense, for the role that you are going to play. Maybe as a senior prince, or as this, or even as a king. So all of these things are well prepared. They're all well entrenched traditionally for centuries.
What is the importance of what is happening now, the secrecy around it? Is it just to allow the family privacy, or is there a much deeper sacred element to that?
There's definitely a deeper sacred element. If one knows how the pharaohs were buried, similarly, the same thing is. As Tula Caesar was saying, that the place where they bury the king is called the Valley of the Kings. We have the Valley of the Kings in Egypt as well. So secrecy is an organizing principle in African thought. Normally, like when you go to see the king in Swaziland, you never see the king in a sense during the day. He starts his meetings at about 2:30 in the morning. Everything is there. But when you go to see the king, you are protected by the darkness. You go back home, you are protected actually by the darkness. So secrecy plays quite a very, very, very important role. But especially when it gets on to the issues of burial. People are buried sometimes with some of the things that are precious, to them, that are going to take them to the next, world. So the secret is there that there should be no grave robbers or grave diggers. There should be no people who want to dig the body of the king, because they feel there's powerful medicine, if at all I've got something like this. So the whole of this kind of a secrecy is a very practically needed, I think.
So how will he be laid to rest? Is it in a tomb? Is it in a coffin? Or will he be laid directly into the ground? What do we know?
I mean, normally, I'm not quite sure, but normally with the kings, you put them in a cave. If you don't put them in a cave, you dig a very big ground with 2 rooms, where the person is going to be mummified, made to sit down, royally, and then next door you've got all of the things, his headrest, in a variety of the stuff that are there, either in a cave or you dig really down. But in this particular case, I'm not quite sure which one it is going to be.
What do we know about succession? I know that it is not okay to talk about it while the king is still alive, and it is not yet public who will succeed him. We know that tragically his oldest son was murdered in November last year. My understanding is that it is the oldest son of the chief wife who is normally the successor. So what will happen now around who may succeed him?
Yeah, it's quite a very well thought of things. Normally what happens is that either the king marries someone from another royal family, and then also there's ways in which the wife that the king takes, the lobola, is being paid for by the nation. And by saying that nation, therefore the nation says, we are choosing this one. Whoever the child is going to do is the one we want, that they must actually rule us. So you've got a house, that is seed-bearing house, and then you've got the right-hand house, so that if this other house doesn't produce an heir, there's already another house that has got the right to produce an heir, and different other roles that have been played by different houses in the royal place.
So one of the things we've heard during the course of the day is that the king has left a will, and that there's a possibility that he might have mentioned in that will who should succeed him. Who actually ends up making the decision? Can it be the king, or is it, if it's not clear, how is it decided?
So, I mean, normally is that the king doesn't work alone. The king has got a royal council.
Right.
The council of, senior, the traditional, leaders that, guide and help him. So if at all then he has got a will, it would be that he had consulted with the broader people that advise him and guide him, because they represent the very spirit of the nation. So it is not just one thing, because the Zulu people believe that a group of trees break the angry wind, but the tree that towers above the rest is broken, by the wind. So humility, becomes, that. So you can't just say, okay, I want that one to be my. It has got to go through to the council, tradition, how it is. But in the olden days, well, during the time of Shaka, it was who actually was more powerful with a spear, who would organize more armies, coup d'etats, take over, because we are weak, you can't rule, so let me get rid of you, and then take over. That was, in a sense, a Shagan way of doing it. But now, as it went in then, successfully from different ones, houses were involved in it, who is one to succeed and who one is succeed, and also the family out of which they actually come, people also had played a particular role in history.
You know, it's fascinating because in this modern era, some people might say, well, why do we need kings and queens? Why do we need these monarchs with all these traditions? But watching today, it's just been awe-inspiring, that sense of history, that sense of rootedness in a group of people. What do you think the challenge is going to be for the new monarch, whoever he is, as we are in such an extraordinary period here in South Africa? Big debates around the land ownership. We're in the middle of a global pandemic. Whoever takes over surely is going to have to be quite extraordinary.
You know, he has got to be quite extraordinary. He has got to, address, all of those, issues. The king himself brought back some of the customs that were banished, like initiations. And initiations, not as they are generally understood, that initiation is circumcision, it's not. It literally means you are being initiated into your Zuluness, your culture, your philosophy, your belief systems, your religion. So in the time of Shaka, initiations that implied that there will be circumcision, that if an enemy attacks, the army could be very paralyzed because they are recovering from the operation. So Shaka felt that that was not going to be. But that was then replaced by a system of what you call amabuto, regiments, where people belong to a particular regiments that are determined actually by age, so that the people could then start bonding, actually with each other. There are those that involve the princes and the princesses that are there, that they get to know each other, they develop each other, they develop their own kind of a language, so that if one of them succeeds into a higher position, then we are in a position to know that they'll be safe, they've been prepared.
Wonderful, and of course we saw so many of those rituals around the Amabuto today during that process. And I just want to thank you so much for joining me in studio, explaining some of the traditions around the Zulu monarch. Professor Pitika Ntili, thank you so much. Of course, historian, sculptor, and author, Professor Pitika Ntili.